Hello. Nice to see everybody. It's great to be back doing conferencing. Good old Jeff pulled it off again and his team. So good to see a lot of people here, and thanks for sticking by and being patient. I hope it's been a good morning. We've got some really good guests on this panel. We're just waiting for Lena. She's around somewhere, so we'll take a slow. There we go. Yeah, it's Lena, everybody. What an entrance. I'll blame it on everyone's had dinner problems, right? Taking the time to get your orders in. So this panel, I was going to write an intro to explain it, and you've probably seen it in the program, but I'll read out what Jeff said because he put it really succinctly, which is, this has been a year to rethink and reassess, and enforced separation from one another and our audiences has meant that many people working in music have had to adapt to new ways of working and connecting. It has also given us time to reflect on how the industry used to work and to consider whether this pause has given us an opportunity to make better choices as we restart. New ideas of how to connect with people online have already highlighted the potential for a more accessible and equitable sector, perhaps even eroding some social and geographical barriers. People have also had time to reassess how we value music in our lives and communities, and the importance of camaraderie in such uncertain times. So in this session, we consider what lockdown has taught us and the positives we can take from having to rethink how to do things. So obviously, we've all been through a rough time in different ways. The industry's been through a rough time. We've all got our own stories to tell around that, but obviously today we want to try and focus on how we've had to adapt, how we've had to rethink, and how we've had to change throughout that. The opportunities we've all found in the work we do, and also how we feel like we can move forward by being adaptable and being resilient, I suppose, more than anything. So the first thing I want to do really is just go around the panel. For people who might not know as well, just introduce who you are, but maybe say what you would have said in 2019 about what you do, and then say what you do now. Or, how you've changed. So, who you were then and who you are now.
Hi, I'm Laurie Vincent. Bit nervous being back on a microphone. I guess in 2019 I was a musician. I would have called myself guitarist in a band called Slaves. Whereas now, a bit of everything, like remixing, producing, writing, and more of a sort of songwriter in my head than just in a band. But yeah, still sort of see myself kind of the same. Your turn?
Nathan Clark from Broodnell in Leeds. I think in pre-COVID, I probably would have spoken about the venue a lot and less about the shows, but it gave us a chance to reevaluate. And post-COVID and that now, I look at the amount of shows that we do. So I would call us more of a major promoter in some ways alongside that, and I also collaborate on a lot of other associations and have helped and sit on the board of Live, the new industry umbrella association group that has formed through COVID, and championing best practice in music and pushing forward for reviving Live across the board.
Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah. In 2019, I would have said that I was a drummer in one half of the Pearl Hearts, a rock duo, and I was also a session musician. And I spent most of 2019 doing live shows and touring. Got to 2020 and I was like, right, I'm ready for a rest now. And yeah, it was a bit more than what I was bargaining for in terms of a rest. And I've spent the past year developing my skills in songwriting and production and mixing.
Oh. Hiya, so my name is Lena, or LNA. In 2019, beginning of 2019, January, I would have said that I was working in Gear for Music as a technical advisor, listening to customer service complaints about amplifiers not working. I just graduated from Masters in University of York, and I started my YouTube channel in February 2019. Now, after COVID, I am a full-time YouTuber, music producer. I own a company called Equitable Music Production, where we try to we work towards equalizing the music industry. So we organize courses for women and non-binary people. And also my YouTube channel, LNA Does Audio Stuff, is mostly concentrated to trying to give a little bit of visibility to other people that might not look like cis white men, which most tutorials are all about. So that's basically, I'm fully now working on all that. And I'm writing a book.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll chat more about that. I mean, already you can see, I feel like if we're thinking about the positives that have come out of the last year, if we can focus on them, I feel like I can already see like everyone's sort of adapted, and some places got further in their careers in a way, which is really interesting, because I think there's this overarching like cloud of like that it's all been doom and gloom, and it's definitely been painful, but it seems like there's a lot of success stories that have come out of it. I wanted to start with you, Nathan, in terms of the venue, because from my perspective as an outsider, it felt like as we was all getting used to the first lockdown and all that coming out, and not long after that, you was one of the venues in the country that kind of seemed to just crack on to the next phase and start thinking about streaming and how you might do that and how you might keep hold of your audiences and keep people witnessing live music or live events. And also how to adapt your brand, so you've kind of expanded it and looked at how you can sort of transfer those skills outside of a venue, which I think traditionally venues see themselves as like a venue, and we put on gigs, and if we can't put on gigs, we can't do anything else.
Inside four walls.
Exactly, yes.
So without stuttering, I think that I looked at us as you say, a brand, and I looked at it in a way that I wanted to look at the venue as a glocal. So I was really proud of our local roots and maintaining that connection with the community. And as soon as you started to realise quite early on that COVID's coming, something's happening, how can we maintain a relationship with our community throughout it? But also, you know, some levels of the artists that we work with not on a day-to-day basis, who are touring through, international artists that we have got a relationship with over 15, 20 years. And how can we keep that and maintain, what I come to quickly realise is artists and managers and everyone across the board have got their own narrow funnel profile. So they have only got their audience. How do we introduce them? And us as a venue were one of the outlets that had a wider scope and reach, and people looking at us. If we can maintain that relationship, we've then got an access point for everyone, not only locally, but globally. And if we can grow that, and so it was a lot of time of sitting with our staff and looking at, and one of the things that I'm keen to believe in is, and I was talking about this before with Lena, is data. What I heard from major promoters, what I hear on a typical level about promoting shows or in a venue, why it might not come to your venue or come to somewhere else is because they've got more data than you. Data is useless without it being information. If you are not able to turn it into information, and one of the things that I talk about when I'm talking about glocal is, if we've got a connection to you as a person, does someone open an email from a major ticketing company, or do they just click if they don't see it in the headline? But if it's from some company or organisation or venue or promoter that you've got an affinity with, you start to read it, right? So if you can grow that audience base, maintain that relationship, scope that out wider and worldwide, you've got a global and local kind of thing. And that was our reach when we put in the Broodnell Social Distancing Club, and we used that not only for our own maintaining the audience, but we did it for raising funds for local artists. We wanted to span not only music, but a lot across art and genres and various other aspects that we thought, this is a connected ecosphere. So the artists who weren't being able to do this, the merch company, how could we drive sales their way and connect with them, that they weren't going to have any of the festivals last year that they were going to be printing merch with? How can we support the crew and artists throughout it? So I think that it was building a relationship and an affinity, and then turning that data and mining it and learning, building the YouTube channels and building all the kind of digital impacts that we could do to give companies and managers and learn the streaming side. So some of our team went off and learned filming, digital production, editing, and it meant that we could do that. So by the end of it last year, we were starting to do productions that were going out for Eurosonic, for ATC management, for ILMC, and people were starting to come to us for that. Not only just because we could deliver the product, but because they knew we also had, once it had finished, we also had an audience base that could get it out there. So we've got something going out with Red Light Management next week, where they've come to us with a new band, knowing that we're going to be the platform that has got that connection to get them out there for that new music. And we've also been the one that can cost effectively support the artist by producing this show. Even though it might not go out through us, we don't need to badge it, but they see that connection. So we've made a working relationship, mine the data, understood it, and use this opportunity. And I think one of the things you talked about was, before, we were all on the treadmill, really not getting a chance to stop and look and understand and evaluate our position. And I think that's one of the strongest things that it's done in that, and collaboration and empathy and all the rest of the things that we'll probably go on to speak about. But
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. We want our venue to be not the four walls. We see it as a global thing where we have a following in Williamsburg in New York as much as we do in Hyde Park in Leeds.
Yeah, it's really great to hear, and I think what you're saying there as well is about going almost backwards back to community and reminding yourself of the people around you to go forwards. You know, like working together, thinking about all of the people that are losing jobs in the industry, the merch people, the artists, and seeing how you can all help each other as a community. But it's almost to sort of save your brand and venue, but it seems like the bigger vision from the start was to become something else as well. You've become a production company, you've become, like now people are coming to you to say, can you do this? But you're giving all these jobs to the people in your community. Do you know what I mean? So you're paying that back. Something
else that's really important, I think, is that we can have a show with field music going out digitally one night, and then a week later we're having something with L'Objectif, a new band that's going out, and the same person that's viewing a channel is saying exactly the same on the same platform, on the same stage, and it gives an equality and a global scope to those artists. And I think that's quite important, to have that and to give that equal parity to new breaking artists that frankly during this period haven't had the option. They've had nowhere to play, and one of the things it's learned is it's given them an option to practice, to get back in the room, the mental health stimulation of it. Bringing all that together as being something and giving them the opportunity to do that was probably the most rewarding thing for me personally.
Yeah, and it's been great to see there's so much support. There's been financial support and a lot of people lobbying for the support so you could do that as well in the venues. In terms of going back to gigging as well, I know from my band Life, you know, it's all starting to get talked about again now. And I know over the past year, we did a streamed show because we had to do a streamed show really, initially. And then when we did it, that process, we had to teach ourselves how to set up a live stream studio in our room. We had to learn how to do that ourselves. And that whole process was really rewarding. But also, obviously, the industry's been operating like an elite club, that it's taken a pandemic for people to realize that, you know, not everybody can walk into a venue and see a show. And there's millions of people out there that can't access shows for loads of different reasons. And now we can stream them, people can buy tickets and can make a choice to go and see that gig. Lena, I know you've looked a lot in terms of accessibility. We've worked on some projects at Young Thugs in York to sort of set up some more accessible projects. How have you seen, because you sort of launched a YouTube channel and then a pandemic happened, and it felt like everyone needs your channel and things like that to kind of get through the pandemic, to focus, to learn. And one of the things I love about what you do is the honesty behind it, of getting up on YouTube and saying, I didn't know what I was doing, and maybe I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to give it a go, and I'm going to involve you in that process. And I think that honesty helps a lot of people realize that you can be lost, and you can be vulnerable, and you can be unaware of what you want to do, but you can still, give it a go. So how has that been for you in terms of engaging with the audience?
Oh, it's really, honestly, it's been like crazy. I started filming just by using iPhone, and my second video ever has just hit like 5 months ago, I think hit over 100,000 views. And it was the second thing I ever posted, and now suddenly I have this community of, firstly, Patreons, people who support what I do, but also they just want to, you know, I think the biggest reward, what I get from it, is the fact that people come to me and they say, you know, I never had the confidence to do this. Suddenly, I see somebody who's not like taking themselves too seriously. I literally can't say any audio words because I'm Finnish and I mispronounce everything. So I'm just like trying to be myself, trying to demystify the whole process. It's not rocket science. Everybody can do it. You know, audio has this whole thing that audio is just for the certain type of person who has the techie brain. And, you know, I failed school math and I'm really not like any better at any of that stuff than anyone else, and I'm really dyslexic as well. So then I feel like that community, and then kind of realizing how much there is people who just want to do it, who now had the time to do it, and how much that was needed. And I feel like it was with YouTube, definitely, but as well as with equalized music production, the fact that suddenly our courses were like super full, because all these communities, like we advertise our courses, and suddenly, so our courses right now are for women and non-binary people for learning Ableton Live. And suddenly our courses were full, and everybody's like, you know, had the time to be like, oh, I always wanted to get into music production, but I never had that kind of courage, I never had the time, I never had that extra push to kind of just get me there. And now, you know, we have hundreds of women and non-binary people and trans people going through our courses, and there's actually people during pandemic who's made a career out of becoming a mixing engineer where they used to be a folk singer. So I feel like there been a massive need for it, but also what's been really interesting is now when things are going back to normal, there has been less interest because people don't want to be anymore online, they don't want to be on Zoom. So now our courses used to be in real life. We used to do courses in Sheffield and Leeds, and now we're looking to put those back into like in real life, because I feel like a lot of people, that biggest barrier is the Zoom, but they want to kind of come to a real life situation. But also because we put our courses in Zoom, because I started to make my videos, I've reached exactly like global audience. I have a lot of followers in South America, I have a lot of followers in Asia, India, but one of the kind of greatest moments of this pandemic, greatest moments is kind of funny to say that, but which kind of made me feel really good, was the fact that I saw Instagram feed, like a post, what's that story, of this feminist club in Africa. I can't remember what African country it was, but all these women were in a classroom learning Ableton Live and production for the first time in their life, and my video was reflected on the wall, and they were learning compressor from me. And there was this like a massive sense of community that apparently they only want to watch my videos. And because I was the only woman teaching how to use compressor or how to use gain staging and all these different very technical aspects. And that warmed my heart so much, because without maybe the time that I've had during lockdown to make these videos, now these women across the world was learning about compressor, and I don't know, it was
that's amazing.
Community.
It's an amazing result, and it's going back to community again, about seeing what's out there and reflecting on what you was doing and how to push it further. And I think a lot of people I spoke to in music have taken this opportunity to learn something, or kind of, especially production. You know, I know I've taken, you know, I've gone aside and started to learn production and get better at it, and I've watched some of your videos. You know, I've been working with music for years, but never really had time to kind of properly get stuck into it. I know, you know, Sarah, and I know Laurie, you know, over lockdown, one of the things I saw you do was set up a studio, start writing music, start producing. Do you think that's something that would have happened if you had the pressures of kind of being a touring musician, or, you know, going back into that world? Do you think this gave you an opportunity to explore that side and learn?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did. I think the only strange experience for me personally about lockdown was that I was already planning to stop. So like I stopped when the world stopped. It was like perfect timing for me. And that way I didn't get FOMO either because no one else was doing anything. I'd had like an extremely intense 10 years and I was just ready to just like fall off the edge and just not be in the public eye, not do anything, not tour, and I just wanted to work on my own stuff. But I think watching other people learn stuff made me want to. I had been writing a lot, and it always felt like the keys to the studio were like in the hands of the elite. Like, you won't understand this, don't worry. And I'd always been sat at the back of the room with my band being like, why are we doing it this way? And it was almost just like, shut up, don't worry, we'll do this. You come in once it's all set up and play your part. So I'd been from a world where like you wrote the music in a room and then paid a shit ton of money to get someone professional to record it for you. There was no like in between. I was like from the live band scenario, and it's like, well, we can't plug our guitar straight into a computer because we need to be real. And then seeing my friend produce my music and slowly pick it up and just see, oh, this is possible. And I didn't even think I could use Pro Tools because that was like the professional standard. So I was like, oh, I'll use Logic. And then like after a week of downloading Pro Tools, I was like working my way around, and you know, there's YouTube videos, you can do it now. It's not out of reach. And then within a month, I was already doing a remix for another artist. And then I started getting people into my studio and thinking like, oh, fuck it, let's just try and write a song together. And then making stuff that did sound really heavy, and just getting rid of the live element and using drum machines and plugging your guitar straight into an amp simulator. And now I think like what I could have done with all the money we spent on studio time, whereas there's this fixed idea of the industry. It's like, if you want to be that kind of band, you should do it like that and record straight to tape. And I just think with all the technology in front of us, we should be embracing it rather than being stuck in our way. So it's been really exciting to explore that side of music and to really just stop and think, what do I actually want to do on a personal level? So like, there is no option to go out. So like, is this something I really enjoy? Whereas we were all just on a treadmill. Like there's this thing where like, oh, we're not going to tour unless we have an album. And it's like, that didn't exist when I started music. I've refound that 16-year-old self who just made music for the fun and for loving it again, rather than it being a job or being and not interacting as much with my online thing, because that was sucking the soul out of it for me. That's like actually doing it for myself because I love it, rather than checking how many people are interacting with me, which was destroying everything that I'd ever started it for, and lost sight of who I was because all of a sudden there's an expectation of who you are.
Yeah, and it's kind of a reminder, isn't it, of like why you were doing it. And we was having this chat earlier about how, you know, as artists, as creative people, we're very resilient people, and I know I can speak for myself, but most people I've spoke to, you know, we were making this stuff well before we ever made any money out of it. And when we had nothing, and when everyone told us we're stupid to do it, you know, we always still did it because it was in our souls to do it. So, you know, we're not suddenly going to stop, even if it is a crazy pandemic going on. So we're very resilient people, and not only that, but we've gone away and actually, like, used that opportunity as a catapult to prove a point. I know a lot of people around me in Hull and the community in Hull, there's more freelancers that have popped up in the last 12 months than I've ever known, because they've just thought, you know what have I got to lose? Fuck it, I might as well give it a go. Like, you know, now's the time to just try stuff out. I know, Sarah, me and you were talking about a few months back about how we were sort of knuckling down and getting back into sort of writing music or playing music. And I think you said that you played the clarinet, was it? And various instruments that I was like, you know, people wouldn't know about because you're playing drums in a rock band. And we were saying how we were sharing links to each other's portfolios of music. And it was like classical pieces and hip hop, and, you know, we was talking about it because like we don't get to talk about that stuff. But there was an opportunity for us to sort of go back and start thinking about music in a different way. How has that been for you in terms of the time you've had to spend thinking about that or making it? Have you found it difficult to, because obviously not that all that stuff's paid work, so you've got to get paid work? Or have you, how has that journey been for you, trying to sort of like go back to just being a music lover and a musician in a different way?
I think when it went to the sort of January time of the lockdown, when everyone was starting to really feel it, I'd already sort of like done bits of recording, so I was like had a recording set up at home that I was doing, which, yeah, it's not soundproof, so I'm not sure how happy the neighbours were about that. But I used to try and be considerate and sort of do it at sort of certain times of day and text the next door neighbour and be like, I'm going to do a bit of drumming now. So yeah, I kind of had already gone on this journey of sort of learning, sort of improving my production skills and stuff. But yeah, when it got to January and it was just like, for me, like that was when I found it the hardest. And I was like, I'm just going to go back to basics. Because I feel like if you're in a band or, you know, especially with social media and stuff, there's such a pressure to present in a certain way and like stay true to your brand and stuff. So like me putting videos of myself playing the clarinet, like would look like I was having like a sort of pandemic breakdown or something. But I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to like make some music in a way that I wouldn't normally do it and just record it and chop it up and see what happens. And I felt like going back into a sort of almost like a childlike way of creating was really, not only did it sort of like really cheer me up, but I kind of ended up making a portfolio of work which, you know, I'm sort of going to use in the future to sort of like earn an income from. So yeah, I think it's definitely given me a chance to sort of think about things in a different way and go back to the clarinet, which I've not played since I was like, I don't know, 13 or 14 or something. I think I've even had my recorder out, to be honest. So it's been really fun just to experiment and not be sort of like rock and roll Sarah playing the drums really, really loud, but just do something that's a bit more, maybe a bit more gentle or.
Yeah. Do you think that that time you've had, whether it was difficult or painful at points, because you're kind of forced to do it, aren't you? And you're forced to do these things, and it's not all earning money as well. But do you feel like that the opportunities you took and the ways you've looked at it will influence the next phase? So say if the band starts kicking in, you start touring again with Pearl Hearts, do you feel like this is kind of like some of this stuff might come into that, you know, partnership in terms of like your production skills, or you might get more involved on a different level? Do you think it might change some of that?
Yeah, I mean, so in my band, the Pearl Hearts, there's just the two of us. So, and we're quite good at sort of splitting things, sort of 50-50. Like Kirsty, the other Pearl Heart, she'll throw some lyrics at me, and I'll write a riff, and vice versa. But I think, I don't know, I was like very sort of like rigid in the way that I would approach a song, whereas now I'm just a bit like, I feel like a bit like, let's throw some paint on a bit of paper and see what happens, and then we can craft that back into a song. I think it's opened the sort of doors of creativity or whatever.
Yeah, and it sounds like everyone on the panel, like it's been an opportunity to sort of really remind us of who, like being raw kind of artists and passionate people and community members, to kind of remind us of why we're here. And I think after the first sort of initial pandemic lockdown, and you know, I myself had a bit of like that, you know, an early breakdown of like, you know, depression of like what's going on. Like overnight, you know, all the tour dates have gone. I don't know how I'm going to earn money. Don't know what I'm going to do. But then I started thinking, this is an opportunity. This is something. Actually, I don't want this to go back to normal, because the normal for me was killing myself to earn no money and be really unhealthy, encouraged to get pissed every night, and just live this life that was just like Nathan and Laurie have said, is a treadmill, where you're just kind of on it and just like, this is what it is, without really questioning it. Even though we all meet backstage and we all meet at gigs and kind of moan about it and go, God, I wish this was a bit different. So it's like an opportunity really to sort of stop and think about how we can take the opportunity properly to change and not go back to normal, but actually create something new, an industry that embraces all of this stuff and encourages us to want to be part of it, rather than burning us out so we don't want to be part of it. Because everyone's sort of said, you know, you've had the moments of like, why am I doing this? But it feels quite positive what everyone's just said about, you know, why you're doing it, and there's a clear reason why you're all doing it. So Has anyone got anything to say about that in terms of that opportunity?
I've always thought, like, with the music industry, there's like a really strong narrative of how it should be done. Like, right, we'll record a song, then we'll promote it, we'll get a radio plugger, then we'll do some dates, then we'll do this. And like I said earlier, like, why do I have to have a song out to do a gig? And that's the bit that destroys the soul for me as an artist. It's like, why don't we just go and play an open mic night? Why don't we like reconnect with why we love music? And I think I always said when we were coming up, it would be ideal if you could be in the rehearsal room for 2 days a week, then play a gig, then go to the studio, then have a day off. But we live in this world where it's like, we're either going to tour for a year, we're going to write for a year, or we're going to be in the studio for a year, or change those dates according to whatever your plan is. But you're not allowed to have any balance. It's like, oh no, to be successful, you have to do this. And I'd always thought this is really backwards anyway. So I remember when I took my kids on tour for the first time, our tour manager was like, you can't have your kid backstage. So we just got another tour manager, and I was like, I'm going to take my kid on tour. And they were like, cool. So like, I've had my son backstage here. He's been in like the bath in a truck, like backstage. So I'd always thought like the way it's done doesn't have to be the way you do it. And I think with lockdown, like you starting your own channel, you doing clarinet, you doing glocal, I think it's given everyone that spark to go like, we can actually like make our own narrative, and we don't have to follow this path that's been set out. And it's given us this forced freedom to like rethink how we all approach anything. Like, I just genuinely didn't think, you get to a certain point where you don't think you can do anymore. Like, I'm an adult now. I've learned all I'm going to learn. I'm just a guitarist. Whereas like, oh, I'm going to do a remix. Oh, and I've connected with someone from Australia that I love, and I'm going to remix their song. I think it's just opened up the possibilities to being able to do whatever you want. So when we come out of it, I don't want to just go on tour for months on end. Like, my manager's desperate for me to get TikTok, and I'm not going to get TikTok. If that's what it takes to be a successful musician, then I don't want to be a successful musician. Like, I don't want TikTok, and that's fine. But if you want TikTok, that's cool. And I think what's really important is just trying to like get the message across to anyone doing something creative. Like, you've got to do it your way. We're all individuals. We all have our own story. We've all got our own hardships. But if you're not happy, you don't have to follow the lines set out by someone else. But it's going to be scary, so it's just about embracing it.
Did you want to add to that?
I wanted to come in on that and just kind of, I think what it's done is give everyone a little bit of empathy towards each other, and I think it's given a lot more on a personal level. I hope that maintains it and stays with us a lot longer. I think that it's also given, when you zoom out, because I'm the only one who's not an artist on the stage in that way, it's made the industry collaborate a lot more. So when I talk about, you know, if I look at one of the greatest things during the pandemic and Music Venue Trust and what they've done, yes, they've brought forward great initiatives. Yes, they've saved and brought initiatives that have brought and saved venues. But one of the greatest things is the network of speaking and support between venues, and the people who are in the background at the venues that are kind of supported one another, whether it's a phone call at midnight about how are you going to get through for advice, but that network. And then when you zoom out even further, you know, with the new live group that's championed about Let the Music Play, the campaign, or VAT at 5, or the Let the Music Move campaign that's happening now, we're seeing the biggest global competitors in music from Live Nation and AEG sitting, working together for the best of, with MVT and with all these other organisations. And I hope that that amazing collaborative project that's gone forward actually continues, and we all understand a bit of humanity going on, and we don't just jump back on the treadmill to earn money again, and it doesn't dominate the subject. So for me, it's been really amazing that we've all got there, but I don't want cheap talk to just stop for the next 10 years. So I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, did you want to add, Lee?
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting to hear your point of views from this, because you all been in the industry kind of before the pandemic. I was studying before, like still in my master's, even though I've done music all my life, but I've never been like in the industry. So what's really interesting, what I figure out like now the past couple months is that actually what's been quite tough is that only reality of industry that I know is my studio room and the internet. I have no network, I have no advice, I have no peers, I have no like connection. And example, like if you meet a person online, it's not the same connection as knowing them. You can't go and ask them advice or just something like it's not the same as like meeting and going for a beer and just then sending them an email. And what I've noticed, example, like I kind of drove myself into, last May, into like a really bad, what's that word? When you're stressed and you're crying and it's bad.
Complete meltdown?
Yes, that's the word.
We've all been, I think we've all been through one.
Yeah, you're one of those. So I had one of those in May, and it was just because like I worked in this, I haven't seen my family in Finland for 2 years. I've been in this one room making YouTube videos, making music, and as an artist, I made I started to make a lot more music. I released them with music videos out and all this, and I'm coming to the point where I really need, example, a manager. I have no freaking clue how to get one because I have no network, I have no understanding of the industry, and I'm really like in the need for that. But because it's my precious baby, I just don't want to like email someone random and just give it to somebody who I don't trust because it's my baby that I built. So it's this weird like moment now to come here and meet people and see people and then like actually like meet other people who are in the industry as a professional. Do you know what I mean? So it's a really weird perspective. And I'm like, who's gonna tell? And this kind of made me also think that there's gonna be a generation of people who experience what I experience, that they maybe become successful through social media, but they have no idea how to handle it, and they might give it, if they are young, they might trust somebody who just says, oh, you know what, give me all that, I'm gonna take care of you. And how dangerous is that? So I feel like it's an interesting point of view of like living in social media, living in your bubble, and then coming into the world. Yeah.
I think there's a really interesting paradox where like you basically have struck gold. So as artists, as creatives, when you do something that's successful, you know better than anyone else in what you do. And you're right, essentially, for whatever you want, you're right. And it took me years to realise this. Like, I signed a major label deal when I was younger, and I thought that was like, great, I'm in, I'm done. And it turned out they signed you, or they want to manage you because you know. They don't know how to make your music. They don't know how to do that. So the paradox is that you know best. So like you have to trust yourself, and it's really hard because I've had a manager that nearly destroyed our career, and I got to the point where I said, I'm either quitting Isaac or we sack him. It was that bad. I was like ready to give up. So it's like that network would be so useful because for new bands, and I've been working with an artist called Bob Villan, and he's completely DIY, and I've been recording with him. And he's had that thing where a management company have come in and he's read the small print, which loads of people don't, and it's like horrendous. It's like they'll spend all of your money, and it is super scary. But I think when you start to like get some success, you really need to like basically appreciate yourself and be like, I'm actually really good. I've done something that people connect with. It's authentic, it's new, and it's really hard to give yourself that credit and like to keep trusting your gut. I think that's what I'd like to say to more young artists and more young people, that when someone wants to take your water and bottle it and sell it, realise that you're gold. You are the best bit. Exactly.
I noticed you were selling your own water here.
Cheers to that plug there, Nif.
Sorry, I just thought it's great marketing and branding.
Well, we were talking
well
about
done.
opportunities over lockdown. We started bottling water. We got that desperate. Was you going to add to that, Sarah? Sorry.
Was the water from Hull?
Oh yeah, from the Humber.
Good.
Filtered. Was you going to add to what Laurie was saying? Sorry, or was
no, I was kind of agreeing with what you were saying, and it sounds like you've what you've learned sort of teaching yourself the production, and you sort of said, oh, my brain doesn't, I was not traditionally have the techie brain and all that kind of stuff, but you've gone through all of that, and you've got this really successful YouTube account, and and like a lot of people are learning from you as well, and I think all of those things show that you're definitely going in the right direction, and that just keep trusting yourself, and if something doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't.
Yes.
I guess that's the thing, is that I feel like what the industry can make you feel a lot is lost in your own artistry. But if you then, in lockdown, you create your artistry and you lock yourself into this bubble of yourself, it's actually it can be very brutal as well for your self-confidence to go into that. An example, like, my music is not what managers might want to hear, because it's so wide and it's like so many influences and so many things. So it's totally me, which is exactly what music industry should be. Everybody's totally them. So I feel like what's going to happen is that we might see a lot of these type of artists coming out where they're like figure themselves out during lockdown or during these times, and then coming to the industry. I really hope that the industry is not going to put them down, but encourage them.
I wanted to expand on that, because I think one of the things that we're trying to get at with empathy, and I'll put it in a practical context. One of the things that's quite that's been brought up a lot recently, certainly in meetings and music venues and the music community, is, will you wear a mask, right? In 10 days' time, 11 days' time, we can walk around in any place without it. I feel what this period of time has done right now is give us a moment to look and think and have empathy towards each other. And we should be able to understand why someone may want to make a choice musically or not make a choice musically, whether it's signing a major deal or whether it's not, how they want to put the music out, where they want to do it, do they want to tour in a certain way, do they want to not approach, the rider and the green side of the economy in a certain way. And I hope that is the thing, that it gives us an opportunity now, with all the collaboration, it gave us a moment to stop and think and understand each other a little bit, and to explore other avenues about playing a clarinet or whatever else you want to do. And I think that that's the kind of opportunity that we've got going forward now, and it's really about appreciating others' points of view, and it isn't all just about the commercial sides. And I think that would be the greatest opportunity to come out of it, is understanding one another and appreciating each other.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think that for some people who've taken a break over this time, it's like nearly a year and a half now, isn't it? There's a couple of artists I know who are just like, I don't want to tour anymore. They just don't want to do it at all. They want to make the music side of it, but they're not interested in touring, And I think there'll probably be more people that think like that. And I think, like you're saying, like people working together, we need to find a way to sort of make sure that people can make music, and if they can't do the touring bit, they can support themselves and make an income and everything.
There is like some real hope and excitement, just going back to what you were saying, because I started a brand new project. Like just before the pandemic happened, I was like, right, this is it. I felt like every time I do something new, I'm like, right, I'm getting old. Like when I started Slaves, I was like 18. I was like, I'm never going to make it now. I'll just do something to have fun. And this time I was like, I'm going to start something new. I want to sing the songs. I want to write the lyrics. And like walking away or stepping aside from a perfectly like viable career that could have just kept going to do something completely untested. And that's happened all through lockdown, and releasing it and getting feedback, and then just flitting between like complete mindless confidence and just complete self-consciousness. But when you finally get back into that venue, when we get to play these new songs or your new project to someone, that real life element is going to be when the payback comes, and you see those people who like what you do, because the internet's really like cutthroat, where like one comment can just take you down.
Oh yeah.
So like the hope is that we'll get back out there and we'll meet those real people, and the confidence to keep doing what we're doing will come through, because there's nothing like, I mean, just even sitting on this stage is exciting, like remembering playing this venue. nothing will ever take that away. And as much as I'm like, oh, touring's hard work and moan about it, sitting here right now, I'm like, God, it'd be so great if we were playing a gig, wouldn't it? So I think like as soon as that does come back.
But I'm looking behind you now at the monitor engineer, right? And I look at people that work in venues like this where it isn't the most well-paid experience. But for me, running a venue, for people who work in this industry, what I love isn't any accolade or anything like that. It's seeing those customers go out, having the best experience of their lives and giving them life moments and experiences. That is what you're giving, but that's what he's giving by giving you the great sound on stage and taking away that experience. That's what the front of house engineer, that's what the crew and the tour manager are all part of. And I think that's the payment that you get that's extracurricular, if we can call it. And I think it's intangible. You can't touch it or feel it. But they're the reasons I don't want to turn my venue into a big student pub and sports bar. It's more profitable, but I don't do it for that. And that's the same reason you're talking about your personal thing on stage and why you might want to choose a different direction. And I think as long as we've got an appreciation of why we're doing it, and also the recognition for the backstage crew that are there and how much they have propped up our industry and made the opportunity for you to have a good tour and you to have a good tour and everyone else to do what they do, and the knowledge and skills transfer that we can't lose in this industry, because without them we would be royally down the river. And I think it's really important to recognise everyone that's not on stage and that make those experiences that we hold and cherish in our lives. I think that's a massive part of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the things taken from this is that diversification and transferable skills of, that's how most of us have survived without this, as well, is by being those people. And I know that everyone on this stage I've worked with over the last year and a half, not as a musician, but as a funding bid writer with Lena, as a photographer for the Pearl Hearts, and for Laurie, I've been at the Howl and the Hum show with you as a photographer. So, I've paid the rent by taking photographs, by designing flyers, by writing funding bids, by trying to use all these other skills that I've picked up over the years, so I can remain as an artist as well. But all of that stuff feeds into me as an artist, and it feeds into this, and feeds into you as a career. And it's a reminder that you don't have to just be one thing as well. And you don't have to just say, I'm a musician. Like you said earlier, you don't have to just be like, I'm a guitarist in a band. You can be all of those things. You're now a skateboarder, so...
Multi-hyphenates, isn't it?
Yeah, you see. So, it's important to just remember it's not all about being an artist, like what you were saying as well. It's all of the industry around that. And in this room, there'll be people that are, managers, press people, designers, photographers. And when you're going back to community and what you set up at, Brudenell, when I saw your team come to York and do the Minster gig, that was such a successful show because everyone was respected at the same level. There was this reminder that there's no hierarchy, everyone's job is important. The teamwork was unbelievable, which then led to the band being amazing because they felt comfortable, they didn't feel stressed out, they felt like everyone was working together to make this show happen. And for me, that's been the biggest reminder of all this is, like you said,
it's also about realising that, we don't all know everything, and that what we do know we can pass on. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about our industry and commercial. It can be that I'm really good at standing in a venue, spotting one person in a crowd that might be a little bit difficult at times, and then going in and speaking to them quietly and making the show go well. That one person can change the dynamic of an audience. However, there's people with those transferable skills and you can pass that on. But that's the same with different people in this audience and everyone out there, that if we can knowledge share, be a platform and incubate talent in that way, that's what we should be doing. That's what I see as my venue. It isn't the four walls, it's a platform, it's an incubator to go, use this space when we've got it available, let's do something. And that's what I think is great about sitting here now in a venue, albeit socially distanced, we're here doing it, physically in person. That's the exciting thing. We're going to go out smiling today, have a great time,
Definitely. there's so much stuff here that I could talk about all day with everyone. And there's so many bits that I want to go further into, but we've got 3.5 minutes left. So I don't know if there was any questions from... Where's Jeff Mann? Is there any questions? No. Does anyone have any questions in the audience for the panel? Anyone on the panel, anything that we've talked about? Don't be afraid. You can ask anything. No? Without what, sorry? So how would a band see progressing after lockdown without the internet? Sorry.
How did they see it if there weren't the internet? I think that's what you were saying. If you didn't have the internet as a tool, how would you have done things?
Okay, so if the internet wasn't around, how we would have survived? Good question. Does anyone want to tackle that? I know for me, for me it would have been one of the things we did as a band was we released a single as lockdown kicked in. We couldn't promote that single, so we turned it into a book, and we made an art book and we sent out to our community. We asked people to submit poetry and art and photographs, and we published a book, and then we sold it locally, and we raised money for the COVID ward and did other art projects like that, which didn't necessarily rely on the internet. But it kept our band name and our brand and us as people involved in our community, involved as artists, and kept us personally and our mental health. It helped us just to get through that process because we knew we was doing something productive and doing something as artists. It wasn't just about being a band. It was about how can the four of us remain as a family without losing track, without one of us falling off the rails, without us forgetting who we are as people and artists and forgetting how capable we are as artists. That, for me, that was what, it wasn't just about being a band.
I think I would have struggled without the internet, 'cause like what you've been doing is so amazing, because I was saying to Stu earlier, like I've been trying to learn skateboard, and when I was a kid, we didn't have that access to knowledge, whereas now I can Google Tony Hawk teach me to kickflip, and there's a video where he tells me how to kickflip. It's like, fucking hell, that's incredible. Like, so you doing gain staging or something, we were talking about gain staging, being able to YouTube that, like, we're so privileged, like, it's at your fingertips, and I think I almost forget that I can just YouTube anything and I can learn it myself.
Well, you can learn gain staging from LNA Does Audio, so subscribe and hit the bell icon.
Yes.
I'm going to give you a practical example. So at one point last year in the summer, where about this time where students are moving houses, right? It's the July period. Our venue turned into a huge clothes bank and food bank, started for the community. We were one of the areas that had free available space. Let's use our venue to take clothes in for the community, distribute them to the homeless and needed and poor and others in the community, and use it as a practical thing. That took no internet. That took students who were moving on, leaving university, having purple and blue bags, donating stuff and working with the local authorities to do that. I think that's a practical way as well. You don't always need it to remain close to your community. I think you can do it, and that's why I say I think it's great to move forward as an opportunity to bridge that gap of global and local. I think it's an amazing opportunity for us all.
Cool. Does anyone else have anything to add to that before we move on?
I can just say that, like, I would have struggled. But at the same time, I feel like if there's no internet, then as artists, we support art. Yeah. So I've been doing music, art all my life. So of course, I would probably not have income. I would become go back into customer service jobs or whatever, but then same time still, go back to art. And I feel like what we can learn from it is that, as you said, artists, we will always be artists, and artists will always, we will dig ourselves up from wherever we are. Art will never die, and because it lives in us, so we can't really, without internet, there's still art.
Well, exactly. Remember, there wasn't the internet at one point.
What I'd say, right, just finishing, is that everyone on this stage and everyone out there has learned to adapt in art and music and whatever else. They're the biggest adaptations, whether it becomes with genres, scenes, technology, anything else, you've learned to do that. And I think no matter what would happen, if it broke tomorrow, the internet, you'd find a new way of getting your music out, you'd find a new way of learning to get your distribution, playing a new instrument, whatever it would be, it would happen. You would still play shows in a community somewhere, you'd still find a way to tour, and there would still be an audience wanting to listen to it. I think that the thing is that in the word creatives, you're all creatives, and that's what it gives. So regardless of with or without internet, it's an opportunity.
That's a good place to end, I think. So, yeah. Can we have a big round of applause for our panel, please? Thanks, everyone.